For every multilingual, there is one language or more that they are afraid of using. Let me explain. For me, for example, my mother tongue is Hebrew. I feel very comfortable using it. I've been using English so many years that I feel completely at ease starting any conversation in any circumstances. It's sometimes more natural to me than my mother tongue. But other languages that I know, I don't feel always at ease to open a conversation. Now, the most important language for me would be Danish, given that I live in Denmark. And I tried to practice this language as much as I can. And at first I saw great success. After very few years, I read Kierkegaard in the source, I read many other books. I even teach in Danish. But still, I find it sometimes difficult to start a conversation, a casual conversation, especially in Danish, knowing the slang words, feeling natural when I speak the language, being able to tell a joke, to tell an anecdote, to find the right words in a way that looks completely comfortable and easy. And that's something that I struggle with to a very large extent. And I realized that the main struggle here is psychological. It's not a matter of how many words I know, how well do I know grammatical rules. It's a matter of being able to face this fear, this hindrance that is stopping me from using the language naturally. And I believe that if I would be able to face this fear, I would be able to extinguish this problem completely and then just feel as natural with Danish or with other languages that I know, such as French or German, just as much as I do with English. And the question is how to do that. And that's exactly the purpose of this video. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to break down this fear of discomfort, this fear of being uneasy, of feeling uncomfortable. And I'm going to break it down to 3 elements and try to use sports that I've been doing many years to tackle these 3 elements and reduce this problem in the hope of making the language come more easily and more naturally. My name is Shai Dotan. I am Associate Professor of International and Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law, and the purpose of this series of lectures is to help you improve your English and your research skills. The first element that I want to focus on is the fear of starting. The fear of starting a conversation, for example, just opening a casual conversation in Danish, even an exchange of a few words in the metro. And that's something that can be, to a very large extent, causing stress, causing discomfort. And I try to think about a sport that would serve as a metaphor for this kind of stress, or as an analogy that I can learn from. And my first analogy that comes to my mind is something that I already spoke about quite a lot in this channel, is a sport that I've been doing in the last couple of years, which is powerlifting. I've been practicing powerlifting seriously for almost 20 years. And I even have a video exactly on the importance of being able to start a set. It's called One More Set on this channel. And I explained there that one of the key skills that we need in the modern world is to start something new. And that's scary, and getting into a position to start a set is a good analogy for that. It's a good way to train your mind. I really believe in training your mind through the sport to get better. But then I try to think if this is really the ideal analogy, or it gives you the right kind of skill that you need for the language. And I'm not sure it is, because the fear that I have in powerlifting when I'm doing heavy sets is a bit different than the kind of fear that I have from starting a conversation, because a lot is at stake. Every one of the 3 major exercises in powerlifting, it's a bit different. I think that the fear from deadlift is a fear of injury. So basically that my back will not be perfect, or the weight will be too big and I would just cause a terrible injury to myself. The fear of squat is a fear of pain. Even if I do everything correctly, it's going to be painful, and it's going to be painful throughout the set, not just usually the first repetition, and then I do more repetitions, and it gets more and more painful to a point when it's sometimes almost unbearable. And if you're in a bench press, for me at least, if I do a maximum set, is mostly a fear of an accident. So it's not like the exercise itself is not that painful, but if I would do anything wrong and something would fall, it will fall on my head, I would twist myself in one way or another. This can be very, very dangerous. So it's a fear from something that is extreme, and in many ways, all the exercise besides maybe the squat, something that is a very, very low probability that would happen. And that's not the kind of discomfort that I feel when I start to speak, because the discomfort is not extreme. It's annoying, it's lingering, I could obsess on that, but it's not something that is radical, and it's also not something that is in low probability. It's almost certainly going to be there. And then I thought that another sport which could explain that is actually swimming. I started swimming when I was very, very young as a child, and already as a child I started to do comparative swimming. I was very bad at it. I don't think I won a single competition in my life, but I joined quite a few, and it was a grueling experience. I didn't like it at all, but I think I learned a lot from it. Swimming is a very technical sport, so I learned about the technique of swimming, but I also think I also realized how important it is to be able to fight against discomfort. Because when you are, for example, in a competition and you jump into the cold water, especially if it's not the middle of the summer and it's very, very hot outside, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. You have to add to that, of course, adrenaline of a competition, and sometimes I would have the goggles flying out of my head. I hated that. Of course, that's not supposed to happen, but it does happen. And then it is a lingering discomfort, just like a conversation, because everything about swimming feels a little bit unnatural. Sometimes you feel a little bit dizzy from the surrounding, or you have a little bit of pain in your ears. Or if you swim, as I would do, for 3 kilometers or more, then sometimes you have to go to pee, and then it's a really annoying thing. And when you're done, you stink of chloride. Everything about it is uncomfortable, and then what I would do is I would basically take all this uncomfortableness and I would superimpose it on a moment of getting into the water. Even if I don't have to jump to it as in competition, I'm getting into the cold water, and basically all this feeling of discomfort is funneled to this one particular moment. And that's, I think, to me is a good analogy of what I could have in a conversation when I would speak in Danish. So it would start out very awkward, and then convincing the other side that I can actually have a conversation in Danish is also awkward, and then struggle all the way through, and the same in German or in French. But of course, I have much more cases and much more need to know Danish because I live here. So how do you handle that? I try to think about it, and I think that the most important thing is really to take this starting point and make it into something that is completely offhand, so completely natural, and not you don't even have to consider it. So try to think of yourself as of Tarzan in the jungle, jumping from tree to tree, and once in a while you just end up in the stream, and you swim a little bit, and then you go out, and then you walk a little bit, and it just seems completely a natural part of your environment. So what I would miss in Danish is, for example, possibility of just, saying a sentence here or there to my children's friends when I pick them up, or being completely comfortable speaking at the metro. And my hope is that if I would do that, then, for example, initiating a conversation with my colleagues, but sometimes takes a minute and sometimes end up being 30 minutes. It's rare that it happens, but it does happen. And then all of this would just be done completely in Danish. This would be something that I think would make me much better in the language very, very fast. And it's all about, facing this feeling of discomfort and having enough mental composure to be able to do that. And I have to say that I've not been able to do that in swimming. After I've been doing competitive swimming and then non-competitive swimming and then swimming a little bit, I had taken very long breaks and coming back to swimming, and I was very happy to see that my level was not very, very much destroyed. I could do that, but I would usually just do it for a month or 2 or 3, usually during the Israeli summer, and then stop. Exactly when it's starting to get a bit cold, the discomfort would get too big. And I think that's exactly the same thing that I feel in Denmark, because I mean, I've had periods in which I had a lot of these conversations, and then just shifting through to a situation where the casual conversations are done in English, because here I have sometimes even an edge. Okay, I can speak even better than most people I speak to, and this makes it much easier for me. And that's exactly something that I would like to try to avoid. So once you unpack that and say, this is a discomfort, it's a small discomfort, it's something that you can fight against, I think this can be the first step towards alleviating this problem and speaking more in the languages that I feel uncomfortable in, and do it in a way that I feel is not stressful and is not too much of a problem for me. Now imagine that you get over the first hurdle. So you start a conversation in Danish, and you're very lucky because it's going to be a long conversation, and everything is going as planned. But then eventually there's going to be a certain point in which you as a multilingual, me, would struggle. Sometimes I would make a mistake, sometimes in Danish, for example. Sometimes I would hesitate or pause for thinking. And then comes a very scary part of the conversation, which I've nicknamed the switch. And that's a point where the other side switches to English, basically flunking you on the Danish exam and moving you towards an English conversation. Now, this is bad enough on its own right. So we spoke for 20 minutes, I know Danish, and then you go into English just to make it a little bit easier for me. That's bad enough. But the problem is that for me, I start thinking about the switch and I start to be afraid about it, not from from the 20th minute, from the very beginning, or actually before I even start the conversation. The fear is there. It's all the time kind of feeding into my use of a language. And I would, for example, not hesitate because I don't want to give the impression that I don't know the words. And because of that, I will make more mistake, actually accelerating the moment of a switch. And that's exactly something that I wish to avoid. So I think that the switch is not just my problem. I think I teach to my students. I tell them, I teach you English because the focus of my teaching is to improve English. Because you will never have to face the switch when you speak to a foreigner. So even if you are, you're a German, you know a little bit of French, but you start a conversation in English with a Frenchman, he will never move on to French to kind of move a conversation out, because the language that you both know reasonably well is English. And that's exactly, I think that's, if I had to choose one main reason why English spreads so fast and became so prominently the leading language in the world, I would choose that. It is just a way of people to stay on the same track when they know they can make mistakes. The English is not perfect, but they don't have any better possibility, any better default. And then they just continue to do that and get much better at it. And one of the things that is preventing me from getting better in Danish or in French or in German is that I'm not in a position to be in a conversation that is always going to continue, no matter what, only in Danish. I'm always going to be afraid of a moment of a switch that is going to come. So I was trying to think about a metaphor from sport that could highlight this situation and maybe help to resolve it. And I think that the metaphor could be running. or jogging. Before I did powerlifting, I used to, a little bit before that, a few years before that, I used to do jogging in a very specific way. So I used to run for 12 kilometers every single day, and I used to run on sandy hills, which is much, much harder than running on a road for 12 kilometers. And I also used to do it relatively fast. So I don't know exactly what was the pace, because it was difficult for me to calculate exactly, but I could see that on a road I could run freely for 12 kilometers per hour for long distances, and probably on the sun I was slightly slower than that. So because I wanted to run 12 kilometers every single day, I never did a marathon, or even half a marathon. I never joined a competition. I just have this rule that I do it every single day. And some days, if I thought that I was feeling very well, I was doing maybe 15 kilometers or 18 kilometers, but that would kind of be my maximum. And especially in those days when I was doing longer than my usual quota, I would feel really the point where perseverance is hard. Okay, so that's a point where really I tested myself, because if it's a regular run and everything is going well, then I would just doing my regular quota. But if I'm doing a little bit more than that, it's harder. Then if I decide that I'm going to do 80 kilometers, I'm going to do the 80 kilometers. But then of course there's a very big difference between doing them at 12 kilometers per hour or 10 kilometers per hour, 9 kilometers per hour. There's a very big difference, and trying to keep a good pace is a big challenge. And I'm trying to understand how do I face this challenge. And I think for me, being able to keep the pace despite the fatigue that is getting bigger and bigger, it's a matter of having a very good assessment of where I am. So how many kilometers have I run so far? How many more do I have? How much time did I run so far? How much time more do I have? How tired I am? Do I have any pain anywhere in my body? The more precise my sense of my position within the run, the better my ability to conclude it in the best way. Now, I started running on a treadmill, and now that I'm doing mostly powerlifting, I run only on a treadmill because I'm at the gym, and I see that it's very, very easy. So I would really, I'm running much less today, but I could very, very easily see, okay, I've run 4 kilometers and I have 1 more kilometer to go. And if this is my speed, of course, stays constant, so I know exactly the time. And this gives me a great sense of inner peace. And that's exactly what I need to go through this run. Now, how do I learn from this analogy to a conversation? I want to be self-aware. I want to know, okay, this person is a colleague of mine that I've known for many years. He's a friend of mine. He's not going to judge me. He's not going to damage my career. I made already several mistakes that I can notice already in grammar. I use the wrong words. I'm probably going to make more mistakes later on. The conversation is not going to be forever. It's going to be maybe for 5 minutes more. And now I can take a deep breath and say, okay, I can do this. And I can continue the conversation all the way through without being afraid of the switch. And if somebody switches, I can just continue to speak in Danish, and maybe they will realize and try to continue. And if not, that's also okay. If the conversation ends up not being perfect, that's fine. But being very, very aware of everything, okay? The social situation, the time, how I feel, how my brain is working at the moment. Am I foggy, or am I thinking clear and sharp just like I used to? All this would give me the peace that I need to not be afraid of this moment of switching, and to just lead the conversation to a natural end. And the more natural this feels, the better. Because then, if you go back to the first idea, everything feels like a completely normal continuation of my day, and this flow between tasks is done completely in Danish, and then it becomes much easier for me to to use this language well without any element of stress. There is a fun element that I put into this fear or unease or discomfort of speaking a language you don't know perfectly well. And that's the 100% acknowledgement that you are not perfect. Imagine me, going to teach a class in Danish, and I rehearse the first sentence in my mind, not once, but 10 times, even when I'm going in the metro, even the night before. And every single time I rehearse it in my mind, I know the sentence is imperfect. It's imperfect. I know Danish well enough to know that the grammar is not working well, or that I didn't choose the right words. But there's not so much I can do about it. And that's something that can be very, very stressful. You start a conversation, you start to talk with a stranger, with a friend, with somebody that you want to impress or to start a relationship with. And you know that what you're going to say is imperfect, even though you rehearsed it in your mind before. That's a very painful feeling, I think. And I try to think what sport helped me to deal with this feeling. And the answer is karate. So around the time I was 7 years old, I insisted that my parents register me to a karate class. They wanted me to do only swimming, and I continued the swimming, but I really insisted on the karate, and I loved it. I was always very bad at it. I'm a white belt, even though I've been doing karate intermittently for many, many, many years. I'm really, really bad in karate, but I always loved it. I love the discipline that it imposes. I love the beauty of the movement. I love the sensation of doing that. It's great. But the key to karate, I think the saying goes, karate begins and ends in kata. Kata is a ceremonial series of movements. So you basically imagine a series of opponents and you are fighting against them on multiple directions in a particular order. It's always exactly the same. And that's a very important part of karate. The two other parts that we used to do were basically you do the same movement again and again and again and again, the same punch or the same kick 1,000 times sometimes, and then varieties of personal combat in different degrees of freedom. So from a situation where you just do one hit and the other opponent blocks you, to a situation where you do a slightly more complex combination, to a situation where you basically do some form of combat within a certain set of rules. When I trained as a child, for example, we used to let us do sumo against each other, and I liked it a lot. That's a part that I really, really liked. And the nice thing about these parts is it comes very natural. The comparative element is there. But imagine the type of kata. So if you take a kata and you say, you're going to do a specific kata. The first kata is a Yan Shodan. I did it maybe many thousands of times of my life. And I try and I start to think about doing that. And I know that it's going to be imperfect. Okay, I saw the sensei do it. I saw the black belts do it. It's perfect. And even in my mind, before I actually do the kata, I know it's going to be imperfect. Just like in Danish, I know that what I rehearse in my mind 10 times, it's an ideal version compared to what I will speak, because I'm going to make mistakes, okay? And the same goes with the kata. I rehearsed in my mind the kata. I try to think about it. Even in my mind, even the ideal version is flawed on numerous accounts. And some of them I can articulate, and some of them I can just sense, and some of them I don't sense, but I know they are there. And what do I do with that? And the answer is I just do one imperfect kata, and then a second imperfect kata, and then a third, and a fourth, and a fifth. And in a training, you can do quite a lot of these. And over a lifetime, it's thousands, and all of them are hopelessly flawed. And that's something that I think I just have to make myself feel comfortable with when I'm dealing with a language that I don't master fully. Obviously, I also make mistakes in English and in Hebrew, but there are much, much fewer than the mistakes I make in Danish. But the feeling of knowing for 100% certainty that what I'm going to say now is going to be imperfect, and yet saying that and engaging again and again and again, that's something that I think is key to the very gradual improvement that leads eventually to a mastery of a language. So these are the three elements that I try to resist as I deal with languages that I know but do not master. I try to make the entry point into the language as natural as possible, even though it's going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to try to fight through conversations, even though the discomfort is sometimes getting almost unbearable, by keeping a good sense of what's going on and not letting panic overtake me and trying to stay within the same language. And I'm going to embrace the fact that my use of a language is going to be imperfect, and never be deterred from that, and use it again and again and again, regularly, day after day, year after year, to make small gradual improvements. And that is all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like the video, and I very much be happy if you subscribe to my channel. I also would very much like to get your comments. I learn a lot from them, and they can help me to make more videos that are more targeted towards your needs as multilinguals, as people that want to become expert in English, or people that want to improve their research skills. Thank you, and as always, keep learning.